AI is going to be everywhere and in everything. Think back to in 2011, I think Mark Andreessen wrote about how software is eating the world. And by that, he meant that every business, every industry is going to become a software business. So I think now we're at a similar transformation where AI is going to be eating the world and everything is going to have AI incorporated into it soon.
Hey, Nikhil.
Hey, Piyush.
Dude, I'm so happy we're doing this.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so what is it we're doing exactly? Last year, exactly almost a year back, we recorded a 3 hour podcast. Essentially, it was a master class on AI by you to me. Like I've been involved with AI, like my job is to basically sell AI. So I've been very curious about AI. But something big happened over the last 2 years with the launch of ChatGPT and LLMs and whatnot, and it seemed like the whole world was talking about these things, and I had no clue what these things were, but I was very fascinated by them. So I invited you to basically teach me exactly like what is the magic behind all of these technologies, and you did such a good job in doing so. um, Actually, it's had a profound impact on me personally and also professionally. So you know this, but like I feel like my career has kind of been on a rocket ship ever since we did that episode, and I attribute a lot of my career success to actually that 3 hour conversation that we had. It's because I told you, right? Like I sell AI. So having a very deep understanding of how these technologies work has helped me like shape my like my own understanding. So like first of all, thank you so much for doing that and like helping me. But it's not just me, like professionally that has gained a lot. Like I've been reached out by so many people who I shared this podcast with. They're like, this was so amazing. Like, when are you guys doing like episode 2 or something? Like, aren't you guys going to follow up? Um, I've actually watched our episode some 4 or 5 times, like at a stretch already, and I feel like it's such a great foundation to like how AI works. So I agree with those people that I think we should be doing a follow up, and this is exactly that. I don't know what this will turn out to be, but like I'm just excited that we're following up and we're going to talk more about AI. So thank you so much, dude. Like I'm so grateful that you're taking out time from your busy schedule and basically like helping me learn more about AI. So thank you.
Okay. I mean, you're embarrassing me. That was obviously, I'm very happy to hear that. Happy to hear that you got a lot out of it and so many other people did as well. And yeah, maybe I can talk a little bit more about my motivation about why I'm doing this podcast again.
Sure.
So the first thing is I love learning. I love learning new things. That's something I've always been passionate about throughout my life. Ever since I was a little kid, I was always asking the question why. And when I was a little kid, my family had a nickname for me. It was Enduku Master, which in Telugu translates in English to the master of the question why, because I was always asking why. And that's something that I've carried with me throughout my life. I love learning and I love helping other people learn. AI is something specifically that I've been learning about in different ways for over 10 years now. When I first started as an undergraduate student, I was studying philosophy and math and logic. And then I went on to get a master's degree in logic. And that was really the early days of AI. And we didn't really conceptualize it in that way, but that's essentially what we were trying to do. We were trying to formalize how human beings think, reason, and speak, communicate with each other, and codify that into a formal logical symbolism, which we thought ultimately could be used to teach computers and AI how to think and reason like a human. Of course, that program kind of failed, and what took off instead was the machine learning approach. But it's something I've always been curious about. Then I think when I went to business school later, I started taking some coursework in computer science and machine learning, and that led to me doing another master's program in computer science. And I have been really fascinated with AI specifically throughout my whole educational journey. Also, professionally, I work as an AI product manager. Currently, I'm at Meta. Prior to that, I was at Adobe. At both of these places, I've built and scaled AI products that are serving billions of users and millions of businesses. And prior to that, I started my career as a consultant with Deloitte, where I was also advising Fortune 500 companies on things like AI strategy and implementation. Although at that time we didn't call it AI, we called it something like analytics strategy or big data strategy. But essentially, what we were doing was the early days of AI strategies. I have a good amount of educational and professional experience in this field, and it's something I'm really passionate about. And I'd love to share my experience, thoughts, and perspectives with you and whoever else might benefit from this.
Yeah, yeah, you have an amazing experience. I think you're being too humble about your experience. I don't know how many people realize this. It's both of us work in a edge industry, so I'm kind of privy to like the impact that you've had. But I think people ought to know the impact that you've had. So here's the story that people ought to know. Let me start with the fact. Do you know the biggest stock valuation drop in one day in the history of the world? What that is? I think you know.
Yeah, I thought you were just asking the audience.
It was Meta, February 2022. In one single day, Meta lost $230 billion in value, like in one single day. That is insane. And that's the historical record. I don't think any company will ever beat that. It's not a record that anyone will be proud of beating as well, right? Why did that happen? I don't know if most people understand like why would a company lose so much value in one day. In the earnings call, Mark Zuckerberg actually said that they're projected to lose $10 billion in annual revenue because of one single change that Apple made. Well, not one single change, but like the pattern of changes that Apple were making. I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but it has something to do with like the way they do tracking. Again, I don't know if most people realize, but Meta makes almost entirety of its revenue from advertising. The problem with the changes that Apple made is Meta was losing the ability to do tracking and measurement of these ads properly, right? Like, so it was losing a lot of signal. So
We
Mark
call it
Zuckerberg
signal
decided,
loss.
right, in the industry, it's called signal loss. So Mark Zuckerberg decided to hire the best AI people in the world to figure out how do we like work in the world of signal loss. And you, sir, are one of those best people in the world. And the result of hiring such smart people, Meta right now has like I think 4 or 5x their stock value since that stock drop, and it's done amazingly well. Like, look, I work for Google, and in the industry, people think of Google and Meta as competitors, and sure they are in some sense. But I admire what Meta does. I admire what you guys have done, and I have deep respect for what you guys have done. So I think you can give yourself a little bit more credit on the amazing thing that you guys have, like you and your team. But like I know the kind of work that you have done, so I think it's amazing. People ought to know. Um, that of course, like based on your educational background and your professional background, you have deep expertise in this thing. But a lot of people have deep expertise in AI. You know, the reason why I enjoyed our conversation so much, and a lot of people have given me feedback and they enjoyed that conversation so much, is I think you also possess another remarkable ability, which is so rare but amazing, which is you have this knack of explaining insanely complex topics in a very simple and approachable manner. I think that so like the things that you were explaining to me, I reflect when I watch these episodes again, is like it was so complex, but the way you made it approachable for me and a lot of other people, I think that's remarkable. So I'm so excited that like I have you who's my best friend who knows so much about this and like is like helping me learn about these things. And it sounds like you're also learning more about these things, and this is helpful to you as well. So yeah, Nikhil.
Well, I hope I can live up to these high expectations that you've set here. Very flattered. Also want to say credit at Meta goes to a large team of people who are, I'm a drop in the ocean there. And that's one of the humbling experiences of working at a place like this is everyone is just so smart and talented. Yeah, and obviously the amazing engineers that I work with every day. Just want to give credit where credit is
Of
due.
course, of course.
And yeah, I hope we can live up to the expectations of this podcast. Maybe I also just want to add one thing before we move on is about why I like doing this podcast with you. I think you have, just like you said, I have a knack for explaining things well. You have a knack for producing the right explanations from people, and especially from me. And that comes from knowing what is the right question to ask, when to ask that question, and asking it in such a way that it elicits a good and explanatory answer to the question. And I think you're really great at that. And that's probably what leads you to be so successful in your sales career. And you've actually taken the learnings that you got out of the podcast that we did last year, the first season, and you've lived that. You now understand the power and the capability of AI and exactly how it works, and you've transformed your role from selling advertising into basically selling an AI solution. And we should talk about this in one of our future podcast episodes, but I think not many people in your world actually understand the implications of what AI means for digital advertising and what that means for how they should allocate their budgets, how they should try to optimize their ad campaigns. And you've really taken all the lessons from AI to heart and applied that there. And you're seeing great success for yourself, for all the clients that you advise. So I'm definitely curious to hear a lot more about that in one of our future episodes.
Yeah, it's very kind of you, man, to say all those things. Well, and I hope that how these conversations have helped me, like hopefully what we're producing today will help other people as well. So with that, I know you've had a lot of time to think about like what this podcast should be called and like what we should do in the podcast. Do you have any like insights to share? Like we're calling it the art and science of AI. You came up with that name. Like help me understand like what were you thinking? Like what's going on in your mind?
So one is just a personal passion of mine. I think combining the arts and sciences is leads to things of great beauty. This is something that people like Steve Jobs always talked about. He always wanted technology to be co-created by artists and scientists. And he always wanted people with an artistic background, a humanities background, together with scientific and engineering minds to come together to create a great product. And I think AI is very much like that. AI is the new era of technology that we're in right now. And there's a science to it and there's an art to it. The science of AI is a lot of what we covered in the first season of this podcast, the fundamentals of how machine learning models are trained, what data they use, how they're optimized, what are the functions used to optimize them, and parameters and tokens and all of that. That's the
The nuts
science
and
of
bolts.
AI. Yeah, the nuts and bolts, and we talked about that. But there's also I mean, that's I would say 80% science. Even there's like 20% art. Often is trial and error. You don't know what are the right hyperparameters to set, what's the right architecture. People play around with these things and they come up with new innovations. But that's 80% science. Then when you take this AI application or model that's out there and think about how to start using that to solve problems that you're facing in your everyday life or in your business, that's very much still an art. And I don't think that will ever be a science. That very much like how entrepreneurship is an art. So the art of being able to identify problems, being able to map that onto solutions that AI can provide for you, and being able to customize the solution to your particular needs and make sure you're solving your challenges. I think that's really an art. And also in terms of building AI applications, knowing how a user is going to interact with it, what the user wants out of this experience, understanding the user's psychology and needs, a lot of things which I think companies today are still haven't figured out and getting it wrong. So there's a huge art to it. So I think this podcast is about the science of understanding how AI works and about the art of how AI is transforming business and society.
That's cool. Actually, now that you're speaking about it, I'm thinking, does that mean that this podcast is only useful for people who are working with AI or are in an industry that deals with AI? Because it's obviously helpful for me, and I am one of those people who works in this space. In fact, I spend a lot of intimate time with AI, selling AI. So, but are there others who would stand to benefit uh, by listening to this podcast?
I think it's beneficial for everyone to learn about AI today. AI is going to be everywhere and in everything. Think back to in 2011, I think Mark Andreessen wrote about how software is eating the world. Mark Andreessen, obviously one of the famous venture capitalists in the Valley, he's the inventor of the first ever browser, Netscape. He talked about back in 2011 how software is eating the world. And by that, he meant that every business, every industry is going to become a software business or a software industry. And you see that today already and it's taken about 10 to 15 years for this transformation to occur. I was very surprised recently. I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and CEOs from companies like Visa and other like non-technical companies or companies they would think of as not tech companies, they want to say that I'm leading a tech company. My company is a tech company, and I think everyone has realized that today. Think about like the taxi industry. You would have thought, what does taxi have to do with technology? But ultimately, taxi companies now are tech companies.
That's right.
Groceries, restaurants, what does that have to do with technology? But every company today has to implement some kind of like technology to not only manage their own operations, but also to interact with customers because that's how customers want to interact with them. If a restaurant doesn't have a way for me to easily make a reservation online or look up their information online, I'm less likely to go there. That's what Mark Andreessen was talking about 15 years ago. Software is eating the world. So at that time, probably a lot of people said, I don't need to know about technology. I don't need to know about software. I work in the grocery industry. I work in the taxi industry. I do something that's unrelated to technology. But that obviously was not true. And now everything is based on technology. So I think now we're at a similar transformation where AI is going to be eating the world and everything is going to have AI incorporated into it soon. You might think so. Industries we've been working in, like tech, ads, they've had AI built in for a long time now. But
Right.
now, for the first time, industries that were never really interested or had a need for AI or having to build in AI into their products and services just to become more efficient or even to meet customers where they're at. Like in the past, companies had to build, say, websites and mobile applications to enable customers to interact with them. But now in future, suppose customers get used to a world in which they use AI assistants to interact with everything, businesses are going to be forced to transform from their web and mobile presence into some kind of AI based presence. And I think similarly, even at the back end, the way they manage their operations and everything, we went through two transformations. First, it was from a non tech world to a tech world, and now it's from a tech world to an AI powered tech world. So I really think in 10 years, or how long did it take? Mark Andreessen wrote this 15 years ago. So definitely, I think 15 years from now, it's highly likely that we'll look back and think it's really silly that people thought AI would not affect their life or their business in some way.
That's a very insightful perspective. Yeah, I think that Uber example that you gave, that was a remarkable example. You're right. Who would have, in their right mind, thought? Like, imagine if you're like a New York taxi cab driver. Like, did you ever think that you'd be disrupted by tech? No, right? But these things happen.
No, yeah.
So I imagine in a similar fashion,
Same travel industry. There's Airbnb,
right?
how a tech company is disrupting travel for so many like products and services today. And if you see any company today or any industry where technology is not a major component, that is ripe for disruption, and you have like a good entrepreneurship opportunity right there. At least I think so.
Right. So what you're saying essentially is the same thing might be repeating or is very likely to repeat in the context of AI. There might be someone who's like, I don't need an AI strategy. Like, I don't know. I'm thinking off the top of my head. Maybe Trader Joe's is thinking like, no, I sell cucumbers and chicken shawarma. I don't need an AI strategy. But perhaps AI might disrupt your business. So
So
everyone
there
needs to
will be
rethink
some
about this.
outliers, like how today there are some companies that still don't really incorporate technology too much. I think Trader Joe's is one example. They don't have an app where I can look at their inventory or order online or anything because maybe it doesn't make sense for their business model. But they probably still use a lot of technology internally to do things like
Right.
inventory management, predicting stocking requirements. Like they have to know exactly like how many apples do I have to ship to this store today, such that the apples don't go bad at the end of the day, but also like customers have enough apples to buy. And that's actually a pretty hard problem. And
Right.
I'd be surprised if they're not already using AI in some way to solve that
Right.
problem.
Right. Yeah. That's, I mean, I'm sold. I think everyone needs to be thinking about these things. So I'm super excited, dude, to like learn more about this and like kind of continue our conversations from last time. So maybe we'll just dive into it. What do you say?
Yeah. So let's jump in and see everyone in the next episode.
Sounds good. All right.